Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where today we begin an incredibly deep journey into one of the most iconic and longest-running coins in United States history, the Washington quarter dollar, a coin that has remained a centerpiece of American pocket change for more than 9 decades, carrying with it a story shaped by national pride, artistic controversy, shifting metal compositions, evolving minting technology, and a cultural impact that far outweighs its small size. So to truly appreciate how this remarkable coin grew into one of the most heavily collected and historically rich denominations in the entire U.S. coinage system, we must go back to the early 1930s, a time when the nation was preparing to celebrate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the revered founding father whose leadership, integrity, and monumental role in the American Revolution made him the obvious figure to honor on a new circulating coin. And although the original plan was to feature Washington on the half-dollar, public enthusiasm and growing political support ultimately shifted the project toward the quarter, replacing the standing Liberty design that had only been in circulation since 1916, yet many believed it needed modernization due to strike weakness, fast wear, and artistic complications with its intricate design. So in 1931, the Treasury announced a competition to create a quarter design featuring George Washington, receiving numerous submissions from sculptors across the nation. Though the contest immediately sparked controversy because the winning design by Laura Garden Fraser, one of America's greatest sculptors, was set aside by the Treasury Secretary in favor of the second-place design by John Flanagan, a decision still debated today, as Fraser's design was widely praised for its elegance and strength, while Flanagan's portrait, though now familiar to generations, initially faced criticism for being too flat and lacking dynamic depth. Yet despite all this tension, the Washington quarter was officially released in 1932 and instantly became a beloved symbol of national identity, with early strikes produced in 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them a radiant brilliance that remains highly sought after by collectors. The first-year production included 2 extremely significant mint marks, Denver and San Francisco, which produced very low mintages, making the 1932D and 1932S among the rarest and most valuable regular-issue Washington quarters ever made. And as the Great Depression continued on, the quarter remained an essential coin in daily commerce, gradually becoming a fixture in American life, from parking meters to telephone booths to vending machines, embedding itself into the nation's daily routine, while at the same time reflecting the evolution of U.S. mint craftsmanship as engraving techniques improved, dyes were strengthened, and coinage demand increased through the 1930s and into World War II, where silver quarters played a vital role in supporting wartime commerce, circulating heavily in military bases, factories, shipyards, and everyday life, resulting in many coins from this period surviving only in heavily worn condition, which today makes high-grade survivors especially valuable. And as the decades progressed, the Washington quarter adapted to a rapidly changing world, transitioning from the silver era into the modern clad era in 1965, when rising silver prices forced the government to remove silver from circulating coinage, creating one of the biggest shifts in U.S. monetary history and setting the stage for new varieties, new minting challenges, and new collecting opportunities that continue to keep the Washington quarter one of the most dynamic, evolving, and collectible coins ever introduced into American circulation. From the moment the Washington quarter began its life in American circulation after its introduction in 1932, it evolved far beyond a simple commemorative piece and gradually transformed into a national symbol carried in pockets, exchanged in shops, saved in jars, spent in jukeboxes, dropped into toll booths, and passed from hand to hand through every major chapter of modern American history. And to truly understand the magnitude of this coin's story, one must look beneath the surface and explore how each decade reshaped not only the physical characteristics of the quarter but also the emotional and cultural weight it carried. Because even though the design remained consistent for much of the 20th century, the world around it changed dramatically, pushing the quarter to adapt, survive, and continue functioning as the backbone of everyday commerce. As the nation moved into the mid-1930s, the U.S. Mint worked tirelessly to refine the design in response to striking difficulties, adjusting the relief and strengthening Washington's portrait so that the features could withstand heavy circulation, and even small details like the curls in Washington's hair, the spacing of the letters Liberty, and the sharpness of the eagle's wings were altered subtly through the years, creating micro-variations that collectors would later study intensely. And by the time America entered the Second World War, the Washington quarter had already become deeply embedded in society, circulating heavily through military bases, factories, shipyards, and wartime communities, with millions of Americans handling silver quarters daily without realizing they were holding pieces that would one day be considered part of an irreplaceable era of United States coinage, because every quarter produced from 1932 to 1964 contained real silver, a fact that would soon play a major role in shaping collector interest and the coin's long-term value. and during these wartime years, the pressure on the U.S. Mint to produce enormous quantities of circulating coinage meant dies were used longer than ideal, causing some quarters from the early 1940s to exhibit weaker strikes, mushier detail in the eagle's feathers, and minor die cracks that today help experts identify original pieces from that turbulent era. While collectors examine these imperfections as historical fingerprints from a time when the nation was focused entirely on victory and survival, once the war ended and the United States entered the booming 1950s, the Washington quarter flourished in circulation as Americans enjoyed economic growth, increased consumerism, and expanding suburban life, with silver quarters filling the cash registers of diners, movie theaters, gas stations, and grocery stores, each coin silently witnessing the transformation of American culture as televisions entered living rooms, automobiles became more common, and coin-operated machines spread across the country, making the quarter one of the most necessary coins for daily convenience. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the Mint continued refining its production equipment, creating more uniform strikes, deeper details, and stronger master hubs that subtly changed the appearance of Washington's portrait over time, meaning collectors today can trace small shifts in the shape of the jawline, the sharpness of the ponytail tie, or the boldness of the motto, "In God We Trust," to specific eras of minting advancements. However, all of this would soon face a dramatic turning point during the early 1960s when rising global silver prices began to outpace the value of circulating coins, leading many Americans to hoard silver quarters and causing a nationwide coin shortage, a crisis that pushed Congress to make one of the most consequential decisions in U.S. coinage history when it removed silver entirely from the quarter beginning in 1965, replacing the 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad structure, a monumental change that not only altered the physical weight, sound, and appearance of the coin but also created a permanent dividing line between two eras of Washington quarter collectibles. Collectors and everyday citizens alike soon noticed the difference, as pre-1965 silver quarters developed a warm, natural patina over time, while the new clad versions carried a brighter but less substantial appearance. And as silver quarters disappeared from circulation during the following years due to hoarding, the clad quarter became the new standard, one that would persist for decades and eventually become the basis for some of the most ambitious and popular coin programs in American history. Yet long before those programs arrived, the Washington quarter of the late 1960s, 1970s, and early 1980s played an essential role in American life, adapting to technological changes like the rise of vending machines, public telephones, arcade cabinets, and parking meters, all of which relied heavily on the quarter to operate. Meaning the coin became more than a currency piece. It became a tool that powered daily entertainment, transportation, and communication, and as millions of Americans used these machines, the Washington quarter became one of the most touched, recognized, and trusted coins in the country. Through these decades, the quarter also reflected subtle changes in die wear, mint production, and mass manufacturing improvements, resulting in differences in strike strength, rim thickness, and environmental toning, especially in regions with varying humidity and circulation patterns, all of which added even more layers of complexity for collectors who sought to understand the depth of this iconic coin. And even though the Washington quarter had already lived many lives by the time the 1990s arrived, no one could have anticipated the enormous transformation that awaited it. A transformation that would completely redefine its popularity, reshape the entire coin-collecting landscape, and turn this familiar little coin into one of the most widely collected pieces in modern history, setting the stage for a new era that would carry the Washington quarter into the 21st century in a way that far exceeded the expectations of its original designers and forever cemented its place as one of the most influential coins ever created in the United States. The Washington quarter's long and layered journey becomes even more fascinating once we move beyond its foundational history and start exploring the deeper evolution of the series, especially the changing minting practices, metal compositions, shifting national priorities reflected in its designs, and the behind-the-scenes adjustments that shaped the quarter into what collectors recognize today. Because the Washington quarter was never just a coin meant for simple commerce but a piece of American symbolism that kept adapting to new eras, new demands, new minting technologies, and new national tastes, beginning with the early shift from the original 1932 design by John Flanagan to the many variations that appeared over the decades, and even the subtle adjustments that most casual collectors overlook, such as the reduction of relief, changes in rim strength, the softening or sharpening of George Washington's profile depending on the master hubs used in different eras, and the constant struggle the mint faced trying to balance die longevity with maintaining strong detail on each strike, which is why earlier Washington quarters often show sharper hair strands and stronger eagle features than later ones, And then came the monumental change in 1965, when the composition was altered from the long-used 90% silver alloy to the modern clad combination of copper and nickel. A shift forced by rising silver prices and the growing fear that coins containing precious metal would disappear from circulation due to hoarding, and this transition not only marked the end of an era for silver coinage, but also created a clear dividing line for collectors who categorize pre-1965 and post-1965 Washington quarters as two completely different collecting worlds, because the sound, feel, weight, luster, and even the way the coin ages differ dramatically between silver and clad versions. And during this transformation, the mint also experimented heavily with strike pressure, planchet preparation, and die hardening to make the new copper-nickel planchets work efficiently on high-speed presses, which is why some 1965 to 1967 quarters show inconsistent strikes, flat details, or muted surface textures depending on the die condition, mint location, and production rush that dominated that coin shortage crisis era. And as the decades progressed, the mint introduced additional minor design tweaks, including repositioned mint marks starting in 1968, modified lettering styles, the introduction of proof-only issues from San Francisco, and eventually the arrival of the 1999 to 2008 statehood quarter program, which completely transformed public interest in quarters by offering 50 new reverse designs that were historically themed for each U.S. state. A strategy that revived coin collecting for a whole new generation and pushed the Washington quarter into the spotlight far beyond anything the designers of 1932 could have imagined. And even though the obverse continued using a version of Flanagan Original Portrait, the master hub was reworked multiple times, sharpening or softening details to adapt to modern minting requirements, and once the state series concluded, it was followed by the 2009 District of Columbia and U.S. Territory set, and later the 2010 to 2021 America the Beautiful Quarter program featuring national parks, turning the Washington quarter into the most varied, design-rich coin series in U.S. history. And through all these decades of changes, the series retained its role as a reflection of American identity, from economic circumstances to patriotic messaging to artistic shifts, with each redesign leaving behind a trail of collectible varieties, scarce dates, transitional errors, proof-only issues, and subtle minting oddities that continue to captivate collectors worldwide and set the stage for the rarities and high-value coins that we will explore next as we dive deeper into the treasure hunting side of the Washington Quarter Series. As we move deeper into the Washington Quarter Series, the real excitement begins with the rarities, errors, high-value dates, and unusual minting outcomes that have turned ordinary-looking quarters into some of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics, starting with the legendary 1932D and 1932S, which remain the two key dates of the early series because of their extremely low mintages, just 436,800 for the 1932D and 408,000 for the 1932S, numbers that make them incredibly difficult to find in high grades, and coins with strong detail, original luster, and minimal wear can easily reach thousands of dollars, especially certified examples. And then there are the semi-key dates such as the 1936D, 1935D, and 1940S, which become dramatically more valuable when found in higher uncirculated grades because the dies used at that time often produced softer strikes or inconsistent detail, allowing sharply struck pieces to receive premium attention from collectors. But the world of Washington quarters becomes even more thrilling when we explore the dramatic errors and unusual transitional pieces that slipped through the mint's rigorous quality control, like the famous 1937 double die obverse where Washington's motto, "In God We Trust," shows clear doubling, or the 1943's double die obverse. And then the series enters its most spectacular error phase during the 1964 to 1965 composition changeover, when the United States Mint was transitioning from 90% silver to clad planchets, a high-stress period that produced some of the most valuable transitional errors in all of American coinage, including the extremely rare 1965 silver planchet quarter, which should not exist but does, the result of leftover silver planchets accidentally being fed into presses meant for clad strikes, and these rare pieces have sold for tens of thousands at auction due to their unmatched scarcity. And collectors also chase the opposite transitional mistake, clad planches struck with 1964 dies, as well as 1964 quarters missing ornamental details or showing abnormally weak edges because of worn dies being pushed to their limits during the coin shortage crisis. And the Washington quarter error landscape continues with popular modern mistakes such as off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, missing clad layers exposing the copper core, and the dramatic strike-through errors where foreign materials like grease, cloth fibers, or debris interfere with striking, leaving unusual impressions on the coin surface. And when we reach the statehood quarter era, the explosion of production volume created countless new varieties including double dies, die cracks, severe die breaks known as CUDs, rotated die errors, and the most famous of them all, the 2004 D Wisconsin Extra Leaf Quarters, available in both the low-leaf and high-leaf versions. Errors created by accidental gouges or deliberate tool marks on the die that produced a visible extra leaf on the corn design and turned these modern quarters into instant collectibles worth hundreds or even thousands depending on condition, and further state quarters like the 1999 Delaware Spitting Horse Die Crack, the 1999 Pennsylvania Wide AM Reverse Variety, the 2001 P New York Double Struck Errors, the 2005 Kansas In God We Rust Grease-Filled Die Error, and the 2007 Montana Speared Bison Dramatic Die Break have each gained cult followings, proving that even the newest Washington quarters can carry significant value, and in the more recent America the Beautiful series, collectors continue to hunt for the elusive 2010 Double Dies, the 2015 Homestead Snow on the Roof Die Chips, and the many major and minor minting anomalies that appear when production is pushed to its limits, and with grading services now certifying a wide variety of unique errors, every Washington quarter, from silver classics to state designs to park issues, offers the possibility of discovering a hidden rarity, worth far more than face value, making this series one of the richest and most rewarding fields for collectors and treasure hunters who love exploring every detail, every date, every mint mark, and every anomaly that transforms a simple quarter into a highly valued piece of American numismatic history. Moving into the deep historical analysis and broader impact of the Washington Quarter series, the coin becomes more than just a piece of circulating currency. It transforms into a running timeline of American artistry, changing metal compositions, evolving minting technology, and shifting national identity, and understanding this evolution helps collectors appreciate why certain designs lasted, why others changed, and how each phase of the quarter reflects the economic priorities and cultural values of the nation at the time, beginning with the early era from 1932 through 1964 when the quarter was minted in 90% silver and 10% copper, a period defined by the classic John Flanagan design created during the Bicentennial celebration of George Washington's birth, with a portrait, modeled after Jean-Antoine Houdon's 1785 sculpture, symbolized strength, stability, and the nation's desire for continuity during the Great Depression, and this silver era remains cherished not only for the intrinsic metal value but also because the coins possess sharper details, richer luster, and deeper strike quality compared to many modern issues, and as the nation approached the mid-1960s, rising silver prices caused widespread hoarding, leading to severe coin shortages that ultimately forced the U.S. Mint to remove silver from circulating coinage, transitioning in 1965 to a copper-nickel-clad composition that marked one of the largest monetary changes in U.S. history, a decision that impacted the entire economy and reshaped how Americans interacted with their currency, and this transition was accompanied by the elimination of mint marks from 1965 to 1967 to discourage collectors from hoarding by date and mint, creating a unique three-year period where quarters from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco are indistinguishable except through specialized testing. And as minting processes improved through the 1970s and 1980s, the Washington Quarter saw better strike consistency. Yet collectors increasingly criticized the aging obverse portrait for losing detail due to decades of hub reductions and die modifications, and this ultimately led to the 1999 to 2008 Statehood Quarter program, one of the most significant and beloved series in American coin history, which introduced new reverse designs every 10 weeks, stimulating public excitement, reviving interest in coin collecting, and turning ordinary Americans into avid treasure hunters as they searched pocket change for all 50 designs. And this program not only re-energized the American numismatic market but also demonstrated the power of circulating commemorative coinage to educate the public about history, geography, culture, and state symbolism, with each reverse being designed by artists who worked closely with state governors and representatives to ensure accuracy and meaningful representation. And following the statehood era came the 2009 D.C. and U.S. Territories quarters, a shorter but important continuation that highlighted regions often forgotten in national discussions. Before the 2010 to 2021 America the Beautiful ATB program began, presenting even more detailed and complex reverse imagery celebrating national parks and historic sites, requiring advanced die-making techniques, multi-stage sculpting, and intricate digital modeling to ensure that landscapes, wildlife, and architecture translated effectively into coin form. And during this period the Mint also introduced new finishes, including satin strikes and special collector-only issues, increasing both the diversity and desirability of the series. And after ATB ended, the Washington Quarter once again transitioned, this time to the American Women Quarters program beginning in 2022, which brought a modernized obverse portrait of Washington created by Laura Garden Fraser. Originally rejected in 1932 but revived nearly a century later, showcasing a forward-facing dynamic profile that honors the artist and reinforces how numismatic decisions can evolve over generations, and this continuous redesigning of the quarter shows how the coin has become not only a tool of commerce but also an artistic canvas that adapts to the cultural priorities and historical narratives of each era, making it a perfect representation of American identity hidden in everyday pocket change. And collecting these coins becomes not only a hunt for rarities or errors but also a study of metallurgy, engraving innovation, political influence, and the ongoing evolution of national symbolism, all preserved in a series that has now spanned nearly a century and continues to evolve with every passing decade. As we move into the concluding exploration of the Washington Quarter, the story becomes centered on the pursuit of rare dates, valuable errors, and hidden treasures that have turned this simple 25-cent coin into one of the most exciting and collectible pieces in United States history, beginning with the legendary 1932D and 1932S issues, the two lowest mintage coins in the entire series, each struck in limited quantities because the quarter was not originally intended for regular production that year but was minted only to honor George Washington's bicentennial, and because few were saved in high-grade, well-struck uncirculated examples with clean fields and minimal marks can command thousands of dollars at auction, while exceptionally scarce MS-66 and MS-67 pieces can soar into the tens of thousands, making them the kings of early Washington quarter collecting. And the silver era continues to deliver additional rarities such as the 1934 double die obverse with its dramatic distortion on the motto "In God We Trust," the 1942 D over horizontal D repunched mintmark, the 1950 D/S and 1950 S/D over mintmark varieties created during a period of hand-punching mintmarks, and the 1955 double die obverse with strong doubling visible around Liberty and Washington's profile, all of which can reach impressive values depending on strike quality and grade. And moving into the clad era, despite lower intrinsic metal value, collectors still hunt numerous high-value finds such as the 1965 transitional error struck on a 90% silver planchet, a mistake that can sell for well over $7,000 or more, along with the extremely rare 1970 S-proof Washington quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian silver quarter, a spectacular minting error that shocked the numismatic world when it sold for tens of thousands of dollars. And we also see modern issues like the 1983 P and 1983 D quarters bringing high premiums in mint state condition due to massive circulation wear and a lack of collector sets that year, making top-grade examples extremely difficult to locate. And transitioning to the 1999 to 2008 statehood series, some of the most exciting modern errors appear, including off-center strikes, double strikes, missing cladding errors exposing the golden-colored copper core, broad strikes, rotated dies, and the iconic 2004 D Wisconsin extra leaf quarters, both the low leaf and high leaf varieties, which remain two of the most famous and valuable modern errors, often selling for hundreds or thousands depending on condition. And as we enter the America the Beautiful ATB quarter era, more treasures await, such as the rare 2010 Hot Springs double die, the 2015 Homestead Snow on the Roof era, and the extraordinary 2019 and 2020 West Point W-mintmark quarters intentionally released into circulation as collectible surprises. Coins instantly recognized by their rarity because only 2 million of each design were minted, making them among the lowest mintage circulating quarters of the modern era. And many collectors have found uncirculated W quarters worth $50 to $300 each simply by checking pocket change or bankrolls. And finally, when the American Women Quarters program began in 2022, new varieties and errors started emerging almost immediately, including die chips, retained cuds, misaligned strikes, and sharp double dies across multiple designs, showing that even the most modern issues can yield spectacular finds for dedicated treasure hunters. And the entire Washington quarter timeline, from 1932 silver to modern commemorative designs, continues to prove that every single coin holds the potential for historical significance and financial value, encouraging collectors to keep learning, keep searching, and keep checking every quarter that passes through their hands, because the next valuable rarity might be hiding in ordinary change, waiting for the right person to discover it. And with that, we wrap up this complete long-form journey through the history, evolution, rarities, and error coins of the Washington Quarter series, a coin that remains one of the most fascinating and rewarding areas of U.S. numismatics, offering endless opportunities for collectors at every level. And as this long and detailed script comes to its final moment, we end the series exactly the way you instructed. Thanks for watching.